Hey guys, welcome back to Pavalauda, and welcome back to Café Enchanté. I'm not even gonna say if this is the finale or not anymore. I have no idea. The chapter's so long. We're gonna see where this goes. Let's just get right into it. Oh, this is Rindo's perspective too, which is so unusual. What did Rindo sound like again? Oh man. Several days had passed since the band of Enchanté regulars commenced our plans. The GPM headquarters, including all of its higher-ups, shuttled to and from meetings on how to deal with Dromi. Through it all... I was there, stuck in an interrogation room. In all truth, I was starting to become fed up with the runarounds the kid kept giving me. The maestro himself, the chaotic prince responsible for this hellish vortex before me, was restrained with non-human bindings. He whistled nonchalantly to my chair again. Early on, he ditched his small fry act and revealed his true impish self, dodging each question with a quip or a quack. Don't take it from me. Mikado also sat in on the interrogations, driving himself and his assistant mad, as the latter grimaced from aside.
有効の証としてホールの使用を許可していたっていうのにそれをあっさり裏切るとはね血も涙もないとはこのことだよねえふーちゃん
裏切るだなんて心外っす。俺は博士さんを裏切ったつもりなんてないっすよ。ホールを悪用するな。それを先に言っといてくれれば俺は律儀にそのルールを守ったっす。
His ability to shift blame was impressive, but I sighed, realizing I'd lost count of how many of Dromi's games I sat through.
随分と余裕だね。このまま自分が処分されるとか考えてないのかい？
だって俺別に人間界には迷惑かけてないっすよ。人間界で暴れたアルムムたちだって自分の意思でホールへ飛び込んだわけだし、俺自体はまだなんにもやってないと思うんすけどね。
I've never heard Rendo just like tisking. I clicked my tongue, betraying my position. Of course, he was right. Dromi may have been the mastermind. He set things into motion, that much is true. But I couldn't pin any of those things on him to get a real charge in the human world. With this, even upper management realized he was a special case and we needed an alternative to squeeze the truth from him. The tragedy of Bestia was within the legal jurisdiction of Bestia alone. It was impossible to charge him for that. The lad was sly, but he knew this much.
ちなみにホールに関してなんすけど、人間界に繋がってたってこと自体は俺完全に無関係っすからね。本当に超偶然にっすけど、全部があの町に繋がってるのに気づいて、それをうまく利用させてもらっただけっす。
ジョシュ君どう思う？本心かな？
競技は含まれていないと判断する。
だからそろそろ解放してほしいんすけど。
He lifted his arms, poised and pitiful.
却下。君の腹黒さからしてイグニスのバナル化以外の目的がありそうだから解放できないんだよ。
But in the back of my mind, I knew time was almost out. Soon I would have to relinquish custody of Dromi for lack of evidence. I decided it was time I loosened the tie to make the most of our time together.
ドローミ、君は何が目的なんだ？どうして君はバナルを盲信し、自分が食われる可能性も承知の上で復活なんてことを。
はあ？そんなのすっげえかっこいいからに決まってるじゃないっすか。
は？
His answer took a moment to register. I thought I misheard him, but... Mikado and, much to my surprise, his assistant were both catatonic, so I knew I hadn't imagined this response he gave. Dromi, meanwhile, was unperturbed by our reactions and began to speak sternly. At first it was about Ignis. No, not Ignis. He clarified, Vanar, and how his past led him to worship the Heretic of Doom. Ugh, this is Dromi backstory? Oh god, do I have to talk like him? Okay, here we go. Watch this be Rindo, and it's actually not Dromi, but whatever. Now then, time for one of Dromi's history lessons. He sounds so annoying. Or should I say, Vanar's history lessons, since my life is nothing compared to the majestic tale of the World Devourer. But enough with the digressions. As I mentioned before, Tigris, like me, are also descendants of Vanar. We were ordered to monitor the Venator, so we huddled up with them in an uncharted region. Fast forward to now, Vanar is just a memory. All my people remember is that we got tangled up with the Venator and got crap for it. Anyway, this is my story. Oh, God. That scared me. When I was a kid, my village was attacked. Everyone I knew was dead or worse. It was the first time I saw anything like it. In other words, it was the first time I witnessed Bestia's cruel hierarchy at work. It was, well, it took me a while to get over the sight. Some things you never forget. Never. Huh? Why was this all so shocking to me? Wasn't it okay to question it all? Supremacy determined only in battle. It sounds good in theory, doesn't it? A platonic idea of the world's best warrior. But of course, reality was disappointing. It was an endless cycle of massacres, chances for the strong to bully the weak. That was the world I lived to see. The last of my kind. I was pretty cute back then, too. The Venator took me in, since our stronghold closely bordered theirs. They raised me as one of their own. That's where I met my bro. Big Bro always looked out for others, but he had his hands full with me since I had no other relatives. A certain incident happened around that time. At first, I thought to myself, oh man, another boring massacre. I didn't give it much thought, but then I witnessed a true calamity. That's right. It was my bro, Ignis, who lost control and awakened his Vanar instinct. The Minotaurs, and even his firewolf kin, all of them, were devoured in a matter of minutes. Boy, was I lucky. My bro returned to normal and passed out right after, sparing me from being eaten. So nobody ever got to find out exactly what happened on that fateful day. I covered up all the traces. Once things settled down, I started to research what kind of ancestral traits my big bro had. And I found a shrine once maintained by the Tigris people. Proof of Vanar's existence was chronicled. I put the pieces together, realizing that my bro wasn't just a Venator, but also had the traits which set him apart from his kin. But I had to remember,
Ignis no aniki. Yeah, Vanar ni kurabete. 捕食本能を忘れたただ残酷なだけな今の魔獣たちのなんと情けないことかってね。
That's why.
あの最悪にバナルに会いたい。あの獣こそがベスティアの真の頂点に立つにふさわしい。その最強があらゆる魔獣を蹂躙し食い尽くす瞬間を見てみたい。
So he's just a psychopath. Like, in order to fulfill my dream, I carried out my plan in secret. One day, I talked myself through the plan, but the plucky Kororo overheard me, swimming quietly around the shrine. Neither Mikado nor myself could do anything but sit dumbfounded at what he just said. It was, in other words, idolatry, much like a child admiring a blown-up version of a television character. Although his obsession was no doubt childish, Dromi connived his deadly plan with no hesitation, all to resurrect Finar. He seemed to convince himself that being devoured was worth it all in the end. His devotion, as esoteric and trivial as it all seemed to me, left a deep impression. In short, I had nothing left to say.
狂ってるな、お前は。
Mikado flashed a brief smile, perhaps echoing my sentiment from my eyes only.
おかしいよ君。僕のクーちゃんに近づかないでくれたまえよ。
はあ、別にそんなお人形には興味ねえんすけど。でもイルさん、あの獲物は惜しかったな。天使って超珍しい人外なんでしょ。だから兄貴が食ったらどうなるかちょっと興味あったんすけどね。あ、もしかしてありがたいご利益で背中から翼が生えたりして。
Dromi loved to laugh at his own jokes. He cackled so hard I thought he snapped. But all of a sudden, he dropped the act.
でもそれもあの女が邪魔したせいで確かめることもできなかった。ほんとあの女もアンシャンテもとことん邪魔な存在っすよね。あそこに入り浸るようになってから兄貴は戦いから遠ざかっちゃったし、まあ最終的にはうまく利用して人間の血肉を食わせることができたんで結果オーライっすけど。
お前、
I realized I could no longer keep quiet.
仮にも幼い頃から君の面倒を見ていたイグニスを、魔獣だからと偏見を持たず君をアンシャンテのマスターとして親切に出迎えていたあの子、一体何だと思ってるんだ。
My brows furrowed, one step away from.
兄貴のことはもちろん尊敬してるっすよ。俺の憧れ、未来のバナルとしてね。ただしあの女や俺も含めたそれ以外の命は全部兄貴の餌。
Ew.
それ以上でもそれ以下でもないっすよ。
He was deranged, completely oblivious to what he was saying or what any of it meant.
ちょっと女子くん、どこへ行くんだい。
この道化を相手にこれ以上の尋問は無駄と判断した。退出の許可を要求する。
要求するって許可を出す前に出て行ってるし。
まあ聞くに耐えないって思う気持ちはわかるけどね。
In all truth, had I not been tasked with interrogating the little rat, I would have let him rot inside that cell. I gathered that Dromi shared my disinterest with how interrogations were going.
あ、いいな。俺も正直ずーっとこの部屋に閉じ込められて憂鬱な気分になっちゃったっす。ってなわけでそろそろおいとまさせてもらいまーす。
何？
Huh? The entirety of GPM's headquarters shook in a manner not unlike an earthquake. The tumultuous sensation rocked the petite Mikado, who fell over. I felt my phone begin to vibrate in my pocket as panic began to set in. I looked at the caller ID, letting out a sigh as I recognized my subordinate. The timing of the call coinciding with the bizarre quake intensified my worry. I immediately picked up the call.
こちらリンド、どうした？
課長、大変です。地下のベスティアへ続く固定ホールから大量の魔獣が。
Ugh. I pulled the phone from my ears. My agent cried out in agony, but I had heard more than enough. Then, a cold sweat drips down from my brow, and I hear a bell ring in my head. I realize the gravity of our situation.
ミカド、すぐにここから離れ。
By the time I tossed my smartphone into the pocket to lead Mikado out, I saw a pack of minotaurs charging through the entrance, standing shoulder to shoulder.
アルムム、どこから？
I put Mikado behind me, acting as his shield as I pointed my weapon at the angry bulls. A door swung behind him. It didn't take me long to realize it was... Dromi, freed from his bindings, stood behind the minotaurs, grinning maniacally.
俺が黒幕って分かった時点でホールをとっとと閉じてりゃよかったのに。こうなることも予想してなかったんすか。まあそのもったいない精神のおかげでこうして脱出できたんすけど。
As he taunted us, I noticed Dromi was holding a phone. Don't tell me. I went to check my pocket only to find the phone which I thought was safe in my pocket only moments ago was in his hand.
いつの間に？
そんなに意外っすか？まあ俺のこと舐めすぎっすよ。
I see.
見ての通り、イグニスの自称射程君がアンシャンテに来店しちゃってさ。
我らの後を尾行し、アンシャンテのゲートへたどり着くとは全く気がつかなかったぞ。
こいつ逃げ足と気配の消し方だけは超一流だからな。くそ、俺としたことが油断してたぜ。
How could I let him slip from my notice? Dromi was a marvel, capable of tricking humans and non-humans without batting an eyelash. The perfect con man. But I knew there was only one reason Dromi would steal my phone. Only one.
アンシャンテと連絡を取らせないためか。
I barked out madly from across the room, and the ground shook as the Minotaurs began their menacing approach.
ご名答。じゃ生き残れるようせいぜい頑張って。俺はバナルを下ろすための最後の餌を回収しに行かなきゃいけないんで。
くそ、待て、ドロミー。
But it was a cry to the void, and Dromi answered with a dismissive wave. Without breaking his aloof stride, he left the room. Oh god, this is not good. How is Dromi... Oh, whatever. I'm so salty. Back to Kotone, who's crying. Great. I sat on the edge of my bed. To distract myself, I stared at my phone. I had been spending all of my time in my room, hoping to regain my strength and let this gaping wound heal. Il, however, remained unchanged, continuing to sleep in the room over. Nor had I heard from Rindo about how the interrogations with Dromi had progressed. What am I even doing here? Everyone was fighting tooth and nail, doing whatever they could for the sake of Ignis and for all of us. Yet I chose to stay inside my room, wallowing in self-pity to no end. But each time I urged myself to stand on my own 2 feet, multiple times I should add, it all ended the same. No matter what I tried, the memory of the incident came flooding in and fear paralyzed me from head to toe. But still, I can't stand to call Ignis a calamity or a monster, nor can I handle the thought of life without him around. I refuse to. That much I knew for sure. But my options in this room were limited. I was sure that Ignis and I were ever to meet again, I would be afraid. If he knew the truth, it would hurt him more than anything up to this point. I want to see him. I want to, but I'm scared. What should I do, Ignis? I uttered my plea, and Kororo responded with a heart-rending cry. A small creature crawled into my lap. His eyes were puffy from tears. Oh, our child! Kororo. Kororo had seemed to indicate some kind of dissatisfaction on account of the distance between Ignis and myself in this moment. Even I. A huge tremor interrupted my thought. I rushed over to the window, pulling back a curtain to see a large crowd gathered. What? With Kororo in my arms, I hurried downstairs to see things from the ground floor. Once more, I ran over to the shop window, hoping for a clearer view from the outside. Right outside of Enchanté, through the door and around the winding road, a crowd of minotaurs leading various other beasts rioted on the motorway. It was pandemonium as humans and non-humans alike tried to flee from the frightful scene. What's this? What's going on here? It wasn't the minotaurs themselves storming through the town as they pleased that worried me. Normally I had Ignis here to handle all the beasts for me, and there were never this many. I was rooted to the spot as Mazir and Canis, who had been nursing Eel back to health, made their way to me to look for themselves.
この忙しい時にまたどこかでベスティアへ続くホールでも開いたってわけ？
ミシェル、そのようなことを追求している場合ではないぞ。今までとは規模が違う。早急に襲われている人間たちを救助すれば。
分かってるよ。ことね、絶対にアンシャンテの外に出ないで。
Okay. Then both Mazir and Canis rushed outside to navigate the commotion.
Ah, もうめんどくさいな。異世界の開けた場所ならまとめて吹っ飛ばせるのに。それにあんまり戦闘に気を取られるとイグニスを封じてる結界にほころびが。
Steel and magic clashed in the distance. Bitter pangs underscored my helplessness. I held on to Kororo, observing from the safety of my shop. Will everyone be okay? At a glance, there seemed to be more minotaurs than I'd ever seen. No matter how much I trusted Ignis and them, I contemplated the thought of casualties. A shrill scream pulls my eyes to outside. It hadn't taken me long to spot the source. Standing at the entrance to Enchanté, I saw Karia standing with one leg inside of the cafe while to his rear, an enormous minotaur huffed, eyeing him like a tasty morsel. As the minotaur raised his elbow high into the air to swing down upon Karia. Karia! Over here! Yeah! With the small aquatic mammal in my arms, I pried the front door open. I used my free hand to grab Karia's forearm, yanking him into the cafe with all my might. Karius came stumbling into Enchanté. It might not have been pretty, but we were safe. I immediately pulled on the doorknob to shut the door when... a foot slipped into the gap, obstructing it from closing. The owner of the foot was not, in fact, the minotaur who had rushed Karia.
Hi! お出迎えありがとうございます。
Dromi! In self-defense, I attempted to shove him out of the door, but he tightly gripped my arm. I ended up relenting, which gave him enough leverage to force himself into the shop.
さて、これで厄介な常連さんもいなくなった。さすがにあの人たち相手じゃ俺も一瞬でチリすからね。
その人から離れろ。
Karya was quick to shout at the sudden intruder, shooting up to his feet. Karya squinted, staring at our intruder as a sharp coldness seeps around us.
おっと、俺だけじゃなくて店主さんごと串刺しにする気っすか？
Dromi spun me around, holding me in place before him like a shield, and the ice shattered before it could take shape.
この卑怯者。
卑怯？やだな。思いやりって言ってほしいっす。別に店主さんを解放してあんたとガチでやり合ってもいいんすよ。いくら俺が弱いっつっても人間と人外の半端もんに負けるほど落ちぶれてるつもりはないんでね。
Dromi showed his teeth, implying that our resistance would put Karya's well-being at risk. Karya, don't do it!
でもこのままじゃ。
I'll be fine. Please, don't do anything dangerous. I think we should wait for Mazir and Kanis to return. Karya pointed his disappointment at the floor, to which Dromi nodded smugly.
はいはい、お利口さんっすね。これ以上ギャーギャー騒ぐようなら有無を言わさず殺してたっす。
However, Dromi kept his hold on me tight, putting me between himself and Karya. Then, just as he'd done on the night he infiltrated Enchanté, Dromi walked me over to the gate and threw me into Bestia. Threw me? That's, typos again. I hugged Kororo tightly into my arms as we plunged once more into that icy world. This is such a mess. Karya, please get Mazir and Kanas, please. Ugh. As we soon crossed over, my breath became vapor, reduced to an intense chill that nearly choked me. Surprisingly, though,
はいどうぞ。ここで投資されても困るんで。
Dromi, the erratic puppet master, wrapped a blanket around my shoulders. It was enough to stop my shiver, giving me a chance to catch my breath. Huh? Why go through any of the trouble? Hadn't he dragged me here in the first place, hoping I would freeze to death?
店主さんわかりやすいっすね。疑問が全部顔に出てるっす。ま、あんたに死んでもらうっていう筋書きは変わらないんすけど、食材は新鮮なうちに食った方が美味しいっしょ。
Do you mean...
あらら、なんかうるさいと思ったらコロロまでついてきちゃったんすか。弱っちい魔獣の分際で番犬にでもなったつもりっすか。
Kororo? Dromi's demented face warped as he lunged to snatch Kororo from my arms. Then he tossed the poor creature to the snowy ground like a rag doll. As I reached my arm out to Kororo...
さあさあ店主さん、あんな邪魔者は放っておきましょう。今あんたが一番会いたいであろう人のもとへ。
What a jerk! Dromi dragged me through the plush snow. There was nothing I could do to resist. I winced as the rocky ground scraped my back. Wow, he literally dragged her. She just collapsed on the ground and he was dragging her across the ground. Jesus. Kororo, no. Huh? What? Oh, is the ground hollow? Oh shoot, maybe Kororo can swim? Oh god. The hunger had become torturous, like my gut was being ripped from my body. How many days had it been? Any concept of time left me. I sat there pathetically, squatting in isolation inside that freezing cave. All I could think about was finding prey, which required me to break the barrier. I clenched my fists tightly enough to draw blood, using the pain to hold my focus together.
いつまでこんな状態が続くんだよ。
I should have told Mazir, or one of the others, to put me out of my misery. I caught myself groaning in resentment. Then, I see a faint glimmer of light, meaning there was an opening in the barrier. While stuff like spells and magic weren't really my forte, I recognized Mazir's handiwork when I saw it, and that perfectionist wouldn't be caught dead half-assing one of his spells. If one of his projections, like the barrier up there, started to waver,
術者のミシェルに何かあったのか。
something in my gut told me to cast a look up at the ceiling, and sure enough.
兄貴お待たせしましたっす
Some wimpy, high-pitched voice echoed down from the opening, making my ears sore. I pointed my fist, hoping he'd take the hint before he pissed me off even more. Ignis! It was her, but at the same time, I could barely look at her in the eye. But that rat bastard! I'm so sorry. This has been a common thing that me and my friends have been saying recently. That rat bastard. But that rat bastard flung her carelessly through the barrier onto the shrine floor. Oh, God. Well, that rat bastard. After hours of trudging through spacious snowy fields, not to mention without any breaks, Dromi had shoved me into the cavernous shrine that housed the mural of Vinar. I collected myself, but when I looked up, it was him. But I couldn't make eye contact. The man I cherished most was separated from me, visible only through an opaque barrier. Ignis. It was him, all right. There was no mistaking his gentle eyes. But nevertheless, his name quivered from my mouth. In the moment, I unwittingly withdrew, giving in to my fear of confronting him.
こらこら、何を勝手に逃げようとしてるんすか
Dromi dropped kick my back with a dull thud, knocking the wind out of me.
てめえドローミ、そいつに手を出すんじゃ。
ああ、はいはい、ごめんなさいね。けどこれが最後の仕上げですし、これくらいは多めに見てほしいっす。
仕上げ？
そうっすよ。兄貴、人間の中でも特に入れ込んでたこの女の血と肉に目がないんでしょ。あの時夢中でかぶりついてた顔を思い出せばすぐにわかることっす。
Don't tell me. The reason Dromi dragged me all the way to this ice-cold cave alive is...
だからバナルとなる記念の食事は特別合成にしてあげようと思ってこの女を用意したんすよ。一番の大好物を食って最強の獣になれる。最高だと思わないっすか？
ドローミ、てめえ。
いやー、そんな喜んでもらえるなんて射程冥利に尽きるってもんっすね。さ、時間の猶予はあげますからゆっくり味わって。
ざけんな、誰がんなこと
するでしょ。 あんたの本能が獲物を前におとなしくしてるはずがないっす。
I hope he eats Dromi. God. Dromi curled his lips into a menacing grin, unsheathed his claws, and reached over to tear my bandage with his sharp fingertips. The bandage clung to my raw flesh, stinging immensely as he reopened the wound. Drip. As he ripped the bandage from my arm, droplets of blood dripped onto the ice. Ignis rushed to cover his mouth, retreating a few steps back as his instincts kicked in. His cry reverberated there we go, through the cave. It hadn't taken me long to realize how much agony his hunger had caused him. He swung his arms out, trying to gain even more distance from me. But all he could do inside this tiny prison was pace back and forth. Don't go. I wanted nothing more to say that. However, my arm throbbed as the blood trickled down. As my stomach sank, I stood rooted in place. Wee, this is your Puffalata trigger warning. So, I'm not going to give a time to skip ahead to since it's so plot focused, but I just wanted to warn you guys, there's some self-harm, there's a lot of physical abuse from you-know-who, and there's a hint of sexual assault ahead. It's very small, and it doesn't last that long, so do not worry, but there is a hint of it. So if you're uncomfortable with any of those things, I would just skip the episode, just completely skip it. You can read about it somewhere else, but just an FYI. Whoa! Huh? My arm stopped hurting. Then, I hear an eerie sound of blood splashing to the ground and my eyes follow its path. The veins in Ignis were ready to bulge from his skull, but he fought his ancestral cravings. At his feet, a river of blood flowed and thickened into the mixture with dirt and snow. The runoff trickled to the barrier's edge. I gazed in horror at Ignis's bloody claws. Ignis? Was that his blood? Each time Ignis was tempted by the craving, he tore into his own body. His own body became burned and shredded. He was determined not to devour me. His commitment could cost him his life. I could only watch in horror. I cupped my hands over my mouth, but I knew there was no running. I dragged my feet towards him, watching as his body began to convulse violently. Even in the end, while experiencing an onslaught to his mind, body, and spirit, he looked out for me. Just a bit closer. I walked to where, if the barrier had been broken, I knew I would be devoured. But I continued onward, until I reached a threshold I couldn't pass. I'm scared. I'm scared, Ignis. Just look at you. I barely recognize you. It's all because every time I look at you, I'm reminded of the moment you tried to eat me and my feet stop. I wonder why. I thought that when you love someone, nothing could stop you from being apart. That's what I thought until now. What was stopping me from reaching out my hand? In the end, I'd clung to a naive fantasy, whereas my actual circumstances involved the very tangible threat of my gruesome death. But through panted breaths, Ignis responded. His voice howls in lament, echoing behind me. Oh, picture get. Ugh.
なんで俺なんだよ。なんでこんな捕食本能なんてもんを背負わなきゃならなかった。なんでよりにもよってお前を傷つけなくちゃならなかったんだ。ただ化け物の子孫ってだけで。
The burden sat heavily on Ignis's shoulders.
本当はお前を拒絶なんてしたくない。
Oh.
あのアンシャンテでお前が作ってくれる飯をずっと食っていたかった。
Oh.
どんな時でも俺を笑顔で迎えてくれたお前の強さにずっと触れていたかった。
Oh my god, no, Ignis, you're gonna make me cry.
俺はそんなちっぽけな日常すら願っちゃいけねえのかよ。
Oh no, Ignis.
けど俺も分かってんだ。もう無理なんだよ。あと少しでも近づいたら俺はお前を間違いなく食らう。今もお前の姿を見て声を聞くだけで恐ろしいほどに腹がすき上がる。俺はもうきっと自分以外の命全部を餌だと思っちまってるんだ。なんてどうして俺は惚れた女にこんな欲望しか抱けねえんだ。
No, no, don't cry, Ignis. Tears begin to well in my eyes. Despite the grimness of his desperate plea, the sentiment behind it shot through me like an arrow, causing my heart to skip a beat. Me too. My heart belongs to you. I don't want to fear you, yet. My heart was all over the place. Feelings clashed, conflicted, and formed lines that could and would never intersect.
はーい。お涙ちょうだいの茶番はそこまでにしてくれない。
Dromi, get the fuck out of here! Dromi once more kicked me from behind, sucking the wind out of my lungs. He crouched and grabbed me by the scruff of my neck, threatening me coldly.
キャンキャンうぜえ女だな。お前がバナルのつがいだなんておぞけがするよ。んな思い上がりの勘違いとっとと捨ててバナルに食われろ。それがお前の弱っちい人間に存在する唯一の価値なんだから。
I feel like Dromi's like an incel. Like, am I crazy? Am I getting these like weird like incel vibes? Or like, I mean, like maybe not even an incel, but maybe like just sexist, or not sexist but racist. Like he's racist against all humans. Before Dromi put his grubby hands on me once again, my vision inexplicably became bright red. Yes! Yes! Slap the shit out of him! Dromi had all of a sudden stopped provoking Ignis, so I mustered all of my strength and slapped him in the face with my open hand. But then I remembered. I still had to face Ignis. That terrifying truth hadn't changed. But my concern for Ignis was nearly eclipsed by the anger I aimed at Dromi for trying to make an offering to Vinar. Dromi had lightly put his fingertips to the reddish spot I had slapped, a rare moment of reflection for the impish beast. Of course, as a human, my slap did no significant harm to him, especially not to a beast. But Dromi slowly rose, pursing his lips as he searched for a response. Oh, yep, he is racist as fuck. Dromi knocked me down with a roundhouse kick. As Ignis gets closer to me, the scent of my blood travels to his nose, and his cravings become heightened. His face crunches as he resists the urge, restraining himself from dominating me. Dromi watched the two of us, wide-eyed and apprehensive. The werecat began to stamp his feet in anger as color filled his pale cheeks.
バナル、どうしてためらう？この女を食えばあんたの望みは叶うんだぞ。あんたと俺の願いはほぼ同じ。こんなくだらねえ悪意に満ちた殺戮の世界を変えること、そうだな。
Ignis, fighting to keep his sanity, listened to Dromi proclaim his last-ditch monologue.
バカが何を寝ぼけてやがる。バナルだってひたすらに血を流す化け物に違いねえじゃねえか。違う、全然違う。バナルは、あんたは今の魔獣どもと違って弱者を踏みにじるために殺すんじゃない。
Dromi continued on indignantly.
空腹を満たすために殺すんだ。生きるために殺すんだ。悪意なくただの本能のみで死者の尊厳を守り、その肉と血を身の内に取り込み、共に永遠に生かしてくれる。血を流すことは同じでも、その意味は全然違う。
It was clear how misguided Dromi had been. It was tragic.
何回でも言う。バナルの生き方こそが正しい魔獣のあり方だ。バナルが全ての魔獣を食らってこの残酷な世界のルールに勝利し、それを証明してくれれば、かつて無ごたらしく遊ぶように殺された俺の家族や仲間の死が間違っていたと断言できる。だから他の奴らにとっては最悪だろうと、バナルは俺にとっての救いなんだ。
I mean, he's just like a religious nut, I think. Like, I suppose, from a certain point of view, he wasn't all that different from Ignis, but it could never come to be. It was too bitter.
ドロミ、お前狂ってる。残酷、卑怯、ああ、上等だ。そんなことは他でもない俺が一番わかってる。それでも俺はその否定にたどり着くためならどれだけの血も流すし、どんな最悪だって呼び覚ましてやる。
Dromi had surrendered his fate, avenging his fallen loved ones by taking the whole world with him. Ever since that day, Dromi had nothing, but even now he looked uncertain to fulfill his purpose. Despite his best efforts, he was once more at the mercy of uncontrollable circumstances. I could only imagine how tragic it was, how much pain he endured, but I remained steadfast. You're wrong. While you and Ignis both pledged to change the world, your methods are different. For Ignis, the inherent value and beauty in the world around us isn't up for debate. He's the same as he's always been. He's the sworn protector of the weak, someone who'd give his life for others. That's why he fights. I continued. That's what sets you two apart. He wants to save the world, and you're condemning it. My words fell on Dromi's deaf ears. Without a word, he kicked my head again. I was blinded by pain, but couldn't pass out. It wasn't just my head. My back, arms, just about every part of my body throbbed.
うるさい。何もかも理解したように語りやがって。何の危険もない人間界でぬるま湯に使って生きてきたお前には何もわからない。俺こそが最悪のバナルの理解者だ。 やめろ、ドロミ!
I coughed up blood each time Dromi kicked into me, which enraged Ignis even more. But it was futile, as his cries of anguish only poured gasoline onto the raging fire that was Dromi's thirst for vengeance.
どうして止める？どうしてバナルが降りない？なんで未だに理性を保ってる？どうして？弱い世界の弱っちいお前の存在が一番の障害になるんだよ！
That's... Can't you see? This isn't what Ignis wants.
この女！
Dromi pulled his leg back, gathering enough force to shatter my ribcage. I braced for the impact of his kick, shutting my eyes in fear, but... A moment passed, and I looked up fearfully to see Dromi halted in place. His expression began to soften. But at first glance, it wasn't as simple as a change of heart, or even a surrender.
わかった。最後の仕上げとして連れてきたが、逆効果だ。お前がいると、イグニスはバナル化を拒む。
Dromi turned neck to glance at Ignis, who watched him from inside the barrier.
あんたが食わないなら、俺がこいつを食おうかな。
He broke into a cruel, bitter laugh.
実は俺も食う練習してたんすよ。あんたを見習ってさ。だからまあ、牙で引き裂いて飲み込むぐらいはいけんじゃないかな。俺に言わないから最終的には多分吐くけど。
Dromi capitalized on Ignis's shock, and the firewolf stood helpless as his old friend shoves me to the ground. Let go of me!
さーて、お前はどんな味なのかな?
He stretched his lips into a deranged smile. His fangs were pointed and gleaming.
やめろっつってんだろ、ドロミー!
Ignis strained his throat, screaming, but Dromi reacted with a smile as I squirmed beneath him.
さようなら、アンシャンテのマスターさん。あんたの味の感想は後でしっかりバナルへと語ってあげるから。それじゃいただきまーす。
Ooh! His sharp fangs pressed into my neck. The tips of his canines punctured holes. This was it. I was about to be eaten, as I nearly succumbed to my daze. The sound of flames igniting startled me. No, Ignis! I could have guessed what exactly had happened, but as I cried out to him, it was too late. Whatever senses he could bundle together were cast aside, ironically, to save me. A crimson storm shattered the barrier. Then... Picture get! Oh no. The flaming wolf of calamity let out a guttural, primordial roar of awakening. Oh no. Dromi, you... Oh, you fuck. I hate you. We're gonna stop here. Oh, Dromi, you fuck. Oh my god, this entire thing is just trigger warnings again. This is like... Dromi is such a creep. Like, I understand that he feels very passionate about destroying the world and stuff like that. But, like, to resort to, like, just kicking... Like, I don't know. I just don't understand why he... I mean, I guess he's frustrated, so he's taking out all his anger on Kotone and stuff like that. But, ew. ugh, I've never been so disgusted. Like, Mikado was better, and Vania was better, because I could understand where they were coming from. Dromi's just a psychopath. Like, oh, God. Anyways, next episode, we're facing Vinar.